Okay, we're jumping straight in. So this is the February 2026 MLBB tier list for Exp Lane, and the meta right now is not as simple as it looks, right? So if you think that it feels a bit confusing right now, that's normal. That's what this video is for, right? So that we can break it down slowly and clearly in a way that's still easy for you to understand and yet still makes sense. So this is of course part of a 5-part series with one video dedicated to each role. So again, this video is for XP Lane. If you are looking for a role that hasn't been released yet, please fret not as it will release in the next 2 weeks or so. But yeah, let's start with XP first. So just to give a brief overview, heroes are grouped into B, A and S tier. B tier are for those that are viable but outclassed by other picks. A tier are strong meta picks with minor weaknesses, and S tier are the top tier meta picks with minimal counters. So we'll start our way from B tier and work our way up to S tier and explaining why each hero belongs in each tier. And you can also know that there are some other categories such as situational and even this, and these are just tiers that I just put in when I feel like it, right? When I feel like I have to bring across a point, then I'll put it in. And of course, if your hero isn't included, it's intentional because this list only focuses on picks that currently have clear strengths that are worth building around, right? So if your pick isn't mentioned, well, that's what this video is for. So let's start with the B tier, but actually before we get into B tier, for XP Lane we have these two rows, right? So let's explain these two categories, right? For just play them in Rome, we have a total of about 5 heroes, I think. We have Badang, we have Gadokacha. Where's Gadokacha? It's in alphabetical order, which makes it easier for me to find them. Gadokacha, Hilda, Hylos, as well as Cho. Where's Cho? Cho. There we go. Yeah, so we have Badang, Cho, Gadokacha, Hilda, and Hylos, right? These heroes are okay in XP, but you should just play them in Rome. Why is that so? Well, these heroes typically find their utility before level 4. They already are very strong even with skills 1 and skill 2. For instance, you have Badang. For instance, you have Hilda and Cho. We have their disruption skills. Badang has a literal wall to push them back. Gadokacha has a taunt, and Hylos is just super tanky and has insane poke potential from early on. In fact, I'm just gonna add in another pick here just because we are talking about this, right? We're gonna add Kali in here, okay? So Kali will be our 6th pick in this category. So you realize that XP Lane isn't as simple as you think it is. So let's break it down first, alright? XP Lane, the most important part about XP Lane is that you have to have a strong out that gets early prio for the first turtle, right? The first turtle is mostly determined by the XP laner. Why is that so? It's because you get your out right before the first turtle, you get your level 4 right before your first turtle, and depending on how strong or how big an impact you are able to make with your out, it determines how good of an XP laner you are. For these 6 heroes, you realize that although their outs are good, they are better off using as a roamer. Why? Because they have skills that can be more useful in early invades, early pokes, early rotations. You don't want to be stuck in lane as any of these 6 heroes, right? You want to roam around, grant vision, and that's what roam is for. XP laners on the other hand are more out dependent, they are more sustain based, and that's why I feel like these 6 heroes belong more in roam than XP. Now they can work in XP, but it is situational. Speaking of situational, let's get to the situational category. Now this will consist mainly of damage XP laners like Benedetta, like Paquito, and as well as Damus. Now why this is so is because it is very hard for you to play any of these 3 heroes without a util jungle. So I'm just gonna add a note here, situational paired with a util jungle. By util jungle, I mean someone like Akai, someone like Baksha, a tank jungle basically, like Fredrin even. So these damage XPs aren't exclusive to these 3, right? Of course, you will see damage XPs in the B, A, and S tier, but these are damage XPs that I feel are less strong and really need like a util jungle for them to function, because they are really just pure damage although Tamus has a bit of sustain, but really the key highlight of them is really their damage and ability to flank, ability to kill, and ability to snowball from early on. That's why they are very situational and should not be contested if number 1 you don't have a proper team composition, or number 2 any of the S, A or B picks are open. Now with that out of the way, let's actually get to the tier list for B tier. So the first hero that I'll be mentioning now will of course be the bottom of the B tier, and the very last hero that I'll be mentioning will be the top of the S tier. Now of course, if you want to skip to the end, you can feel free to do so, but do make sure to give credit to me as well. And if you're at this stage of the video, please leave a comment below who you think will be the strongest XP laner as of February 2026. Now we are done stalling. To begin that B tier, we have Terizla. Now Terizla is a decent XP laner, however, what he doesn't have and falls short to other XP laners is his mobility. Now Terizla is really just a walking like wall, right? He can set up really well, but you need to pair him with mobility options, for example a chip portal, for example Matilda's Guiding Wind. And both of those options are very high risk, high reward plays. We'll get to that in the roam section and in the roam video, but those are really high risk picks in the current meta. And typically to execute Terizla, you will have to pair him with one of those. And that's why Terizla isn't very good right now, because he's really just slow, and although he can set up well, you really can't find that set like 80% of the time. Like, it's really not worth the trade-off. Now after Terizla, of course we have CC. Now CC used to be at the top of the XP lane, but she recently fell down to B tier. Why is that so? Is because she got a ton of buffs, one patch and one patch after another. Her mobility got decreased, her spell vamp got cut, everything about her basically got nerfed, and even in the gold lane she isn't as prominent as she was before. So CC just not a really good pick right now. Okay, now that we are done with CC, after that we will move on to Glue. Now Glue is an okay XP laner actually. Now Glue falls under a certain type of draft composition known as the funnel composition. Funnel composition includes stack based heroes such as Obsidia, such as Granger. That's why typically when you see a Glue getting picked up, it's either with a Granger, Obsidia, or even like a Sicilian, but it's typically a gold laner that needs a lot of farm and a lot of stacks to function well. Glue can basically attach onto someone and basically donate free kills and free money and everything towards whoever you want to funnel, be it your Granger, your Obsidia or whatever. However, he really only works in those type of compositions, and even so it's really high risk, high reward, because we all know that he isn't like super tanky. He only gets annoying when he snowballs a hit. So when he falls behind, he really does suffer. That's why Glue isn't higher than B tier. Next we have Lucas. Lucas actually recently got a buff that made his HP regen on minions as well. So this allows him to be more consistent on XP lane, as he isn't dependent on hitting enemy heroes to be sustainable, right? So he really can keep up with these sustainable XP options. You can see them as we progress to the A and S tier. A lot of those heroes will be very sustain heavy, very lane dominant heroes, although there really isn't much of a laning phase right now, since after you get level 4, you basically just go join the fight, you go and brawl it out. But again, it's really these tiny things that make Lucas go from a situational damage pick all the way to B tier. So I think this is quite an improvement for him, but it isn't nearly enough for him to be ranked higher. Now for A tier, kicking off the A tier, we do have Esmeralda. Esmeralda is a unique hero. She gives you shield, and then she converts that shield into damage, and she slowly just chunks away your health bar. Now Esmeralda is the type of hero where you really need to know the ins and outs to be able to play her. You cannot just go in and frontline everything and, for example, just like take a YouTube shot as a reference and literally think you're unkillable against 5 people. Even pros won't be able to do that. You will need a decent amount of lead, and you need a decent amount of game sense to be able to operate her, to be able to weave in and weave out. But when you do so, she's really rewarding, and once you get a hit, again, she is really damn strong. So Esmeralda A tier, not super strong, but a very decent pick in the meta. Right after Esmeralda, we have Alice. Alice is similar, except that Alice has exceptional crowd control. She has an AoE immobilize that has a huge radius. However, the biggest issue with Alice is the sacrifice. The fact that if you go in and catch no one, your disengage is very low. You cannot blink out with your second skill, your only disengage is your flicker, and you basically put your ultimate on a 40 to 50 second cooldown if you don't hit anyone, which can be very punishing. That's why Alice isn't really decent if you don't really snowball early and get that sustain queen vibe in, and she also can't really last till late game since anyone can just easily pick her off and burst her down before she even gets to sustain through the team fight. That's why Alice went from S tier down to A tier. After Alice, we have a classic XP pick, which is Arlott. Now, Arlott is still a strong XP laner. He provides a lot of utility with his final slash, he has a lot of damage on his own, and he has mobility. However, the key issue to Arlott is his high risk execution. You realize that many people now have began to see Arlott as a high risk pick because it is so easy to mess up with him. One wrong move and you are basically done for the entire game. Arlott players now are the only few people who actually know how to utilize all parts of his kit to get past the shaky laning phase and be able to set up team fights. And even if you get good flicker final slashes, it usually isn't enough because people is usually telegraphed and people can sometimes see it coming if you don't pair him up with something like a Chusin or a secondary CC to be able to lock them down for long periods of time. That's why although Arlott is good, he is really high risk, which is why some teams do not pick him if they are not confident. Now to end off the A tier, at the top of the A tier we have Phoveus. Now, Phoveus is a really strong hero. He has one of the highest early game priors for the first turtle. And if you recall what we said about first turtle prio, that is basically what defines almost everything about how strong an XP laner is. Phoveus is that high on the list because with his ult, it basically unlocks his entire kit. He doesn't even need to be good against dash heroes, but against dash heroes, he can just keep marking them and jumping, marking and jumping. It's an infinite loop at the first turtle due to how confined the area is. The more closely packed the area is, such as the turtle pit, the easier it is for him to jump. So he really does have one of the highest early game priors in the entire game in terms of XP laners, and so he's just really annoying to deal with, and when he snowballs, it can take about 3 to 4 people to even take him out. That's why he sits at the top of the A tier. Now, we are going on to the S tier, and in the S tier, I think we have a total of 4 heroes. Now, for the 4th best XP laner, we have Lapu Lapu. Now, Lapu Lapu is one of those XP laners which we say is good at everything. He has dive, he has mobility, he has sustain, he has crowd control, he has early game prior, he has late game pickoff. He is basically everything you want in an XP laner. He is so safe to play because almost all your skills grant CC immunity. You do need to time them, but once you do get the hang of him, he becomes really low risk to play. And he's just able to dive and infiltrate into your backline so easily because he's CC immune while doing so, and he is, well, I would say even better than Phoveus at first turtle prio, or maybe they're like equal actually. They are equal for first turtle prio, but because Phoveus falls off desperately in the late game, at least Lapu still has that crowd control going for him, right? So Lapu just has that inch over Phoveus, but still not quite enough to make it into our top 3. Now, I am sure that by now you're curious as to who makes it into our top 3, so wait no longer because number 3 we have Uranus. Now, Uranus is a special hero, right? His kit is like no other hero in the game. And compared to all these other XP laners you see on the list, he is probably the most similar to something like Esmeralda. His zoning potential is so high, and his ability to just adapt and HP regen and basically Mahoraga you is indefinite. He is so strong at doing what he does, right? Because once he gets a hit, he just needs to walk up to you, take a few hits, regen back, grant vision, go back in, take a few hits, regen back. It's a cycle of infinite suffering for your opponents when you face a Uranus. So Uranus is really like a specialist, and teams have been finding him extremely useful because another role of an XP laner is to provide vision. And what more to provide vision than have a safety net of infinite healing and infinite regen where you can just poke safely and disengage with your ult. That's why that puts Uranus at 3rd place, but still not enough for the top 2. Okay, for the top 2, it's actually quite close between 2 heroes. However, I'm putting this hero as number 2 because he can be slotted into another role as well. And that hero is none other than Sora. Now, Sora is a definition of a hero that is absolutely chaotic, right? He just got released and he can change into 2 forms. He can change into Thunder form to assassinate you in the early game, or he can change into Torrent form to set up huge team fights in the late game. Whatever situation you're in, Sora just finds a way to adapt to it, and we're just talking about adaptation, right? Sora makes it even more flexible. He can change forms depending on what he wants to do, and his burst damage is so high, you don't even have to go damage build. You can go for a fighter build, a sustain build, a tank build. He just converts all of his attributes to whatever you need in that moment, which is why he is ranked so high up as he is so strong right now. Thank God Sora got a nerf recently that made his Torrent form or tank form cooldown longer after use, but I still think he needs more nerfs before he's out of the meta. So yes, especially for solo queue players that want to abuse his damage in his assassin form, Sora is the way to climb. And number 1, we have none other than the best XP laner in my opinion right now, we have Yu Zhong. Now, Yu Zhong is basically Lapu but better, right? Yu Zhong is so damn good. Yu Zhong is basically a big black dragon that has the best, okay? Yu Zhong has the best first turtle prio. Why is that so? It's because his ult single-handedly almost always guarantees the first turtle when you play him right. He can zone out the jungler, he can zone out the roamer if he tries to pick your jungler off, he can infiltrate the backline, and unlike Lapu that needs to time his CC immunes, right? Yu Zhong has a free entry pass into your backline because he's just a big black dragon that's CC immune throughout the whole duration of channeling as he infiltrates your backline. So he's just so damn strong at whatever he does, his sustain is so strong as well, his combos are easy to execute and still very rewarding. He can work in solo queue, he can work in duo queue, trio queue, even 5-man rank. He is just so well rounded as he has so much sustained damage, crowd control, and everything that you are looking for in an XP laner right now. And with that, that concludes the XP Lane tier list of February 2026. So, as you can see, you can really see what defines a good XP laner right now, and some rankings might be shocking to you, but based on what I've observed, this is what I think are the most accurate standings of XP laners in February 2026. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and looking forward to the next video.